Okay, so we just started recording. I know some participants are just trickling in now, so we'll kick off with some introductions to start. So I'm Julie, and I work as a community manager here at Outschool. And this is our fourth webinar. So we're really excited to have you guys back for another one. And I'm gonna pass it over to Elizabeth first, because I don't know if any of you guys have seen her before.
Hi everyone, so I'm Elizabeth and I joined the customer support team at Outschool back in November. And before that, I was a former classroom teacher for 3 years. I taught middle school math. And now here I am, and this is my first webinar. So I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Great, thanks Elizabeth. And Laura, I know that we've introduced ourselves before, but why don't you go ahead for anyone who doesn't know you?
My name is Laura Forty, and I work in customer support as well. I'm the only one not in San Francisco, so I work from North Dakota. I have taught on Outschool since September of 2016 and worked for support since December of that same year. And so I kind of have a dual perspective on how to deal with parents a little bit as well.
Great, thanks Laura. So we're going to get into the content, but just for anyone who's here, I wanted to mention that we do encourage you to write questions to us using the Q&A function. So if you have a question while we're going through, go ahead and ask it via that text function, and we will either answer you in the moment or wait until the end to get back to you. But to get into the topic, today we want to discuss how to deal with parents who might be upset or in some way difficult to deal with. And as an Outschool teacher, it's important to have great teaching skills, but also great customer service skills. So we're going to share some of the tools that we use when support faces similar situations. Before we get into the super detailed stuff, Laura and Elizabeth, did you have any tips that you want to share? Just quick tips about dealing with upset parents?
Yeah, so the first tip that I wanted to share is how important it is to keep in mind that you constantly have new parents and new learners in your classes. So for those of you who have taught in traditional classrooms or are currently teaching in traditional classrooms, it's typical to go through new procedures, how the class works, classroom rules and whatnot, you know, at the beginning of the year and then maybe at the beginning of the second semester. But with Outschool, you constantly have new students and parents. So you want to keep in mind that they might not be familiar with typical Outschool procedures and policies or your own classroom rules or procedures. So always keep that in mind when a parent is coming to you with a question or a complaint.
There's all kinds of tips I'm sure Elizabeth and I could give, but to me, I think one of the things to really keep in mind that's different from maybe a traditional teaching experience is since it's a competitive market, like that customer service element is all the more important. I believe that teachers, no matter where they're teaching, are, you know, part of customer service because you're serving the kid, you're serving the school, you're serving the family. But here it's different because your enrollments aren't guaranteed. And so when you are dealing with a parent, you know, think of them as a customer in a customer service sense more so than maybe just a parent of a student.
Great, really great tips. Anything else you guys wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just along with what Laura just talked about, you know, the parents have choices. So if they're not satisfied with the experience that you're providing, they can choose a different class or a different teacher. So you want to do everything you can to work with that parent so that they choose to come back to you.
And it's really honestly amazing from my, you know, perspective where we're at in support. You can have a parent who's just like super mad and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how we're ever going to solve this. And then after you work with them a little bit and kind of try to work things out, they can make a complete 180 and turn around and be so happy. And so it's not always a pleasant thing, but it does usually pay off pretty well in the end.
Nice, yeah, that's a really good point. I think that you can make even a stronger relationship with a parent if you are able to turn around a negative situation for them. And I think that we also want to talk a little bit about keeping communication on Outschool, or like what types of ways you can communicate with parents.
Yeah, definitely. So we always recommend that you keep all communication on Outschool. So whether that's through privately messaging the learners or the parents or posting on the classroom, keep it on Outschool. That way, if a larger problem does arise down the road, our support team can go in and, assess the situation and have all of the information in order to help you resolve the problem. When we hear that there's communication off of the Outschool platform, it's difficult for us to help because we don't know everything that took place.
Yeah,
and the parent can, I'm sorry, and the parent could continue to message you, and bother you. We've had to kind of have some people cease and desist after a while. And so if they have a personal email or phone number or something, it's really hard for us to monitor or deal with that.
Yeah, really great point. So those were just some quick tips to get us started, but we want to get into a little bit of specifics about how you could write, a message response to a parent who's upset with your class. And we went through a few different scenarios, but we're going to try to break it down into some basic foundational tips that you can apply to a lot of different situations. So would Elizabeth and Laura, do you want to get us started with a couple of quick pieces of advice before we show them the sample email?
Sure. So the first thing you always want to do is say you're sorry and apologize. And what you need to keep in mind here is that you don't have to apologize for your class or for something that you did wrong, even if the parent is accusing you of that. Just apologize that they're upset or that they have had a negative experience. That can really affect the tone and help the parent feel heard. So starting out with that will allow the parent to trust that you care about their experience, and then you can offer a solution or explain, why you run your class the way that you do.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with what Elizabeth said. Just saying, I'm sorry you're unhappy with the class, or I'm sorry that your kid didn't like it. Doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. Doesn't mean that, you're gonna do exactly what the parent wants. It just kind of shows them some empathy, and then you can go on to, explain. This is hard to give you specific examples because we don't have a specific response, and there's every time we respond to a parent complaint, it's different. And so you can go in to explain, like if they're complaining about the description not fitting what you taught, be careful about your tone and how you write it, but you can say, this is the intent of the class. I'm sorry if they didn't get that from it, but this is the approach that I used, and this is how I fulfilled that. And then give the parent some options, if you can, about possible next steps. I know some of our teachers are really, really good at offering many different options, be it maybe transferring to a different section so they're with kids that are more their age, and you can teach it slightly differently to them, or adjusting your methodology if you want to, or going to discuss the refund policy and why you would or wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it sounds like you have to be really creative with your solutions. But we want to make sure that you don't have to think super hard about your response. So we tried to put together some quick tips and a sample email to show you what a good response could look like. Laura, did you want to share your screen?
Sure, I can. Okay, so like I said, we kind of had a hard time with this because every situation is unique and different. And usually when we get a complaint, we don't respond right away. We're going to go and do some looking. Were there emails sent between people? Did one, did the parent ask for a refund and the teacher say they couldn't? Or, what exactly is going on, so that we have a full picture. And so to help us best write an email, we kind of created a hypothetical parent email. And so that's the email on top. So if a parent writes in and says, I'm very disappointed in the class. It was supposed to be for kids ages 8 to 12, and my 11-year-old was bored to tears. He didn't learn anything, nor was he engaged by your monotone lecture. Normally, he's so excited and engaged in his Outschool classes, and he so looked forward to this one, but it was just a flop. I'm not sure I will be able to get my kid to take another class on Outschool. I demand a full refund for wasting my time. Signed, the mad parent. Unfortunately, that's not too big of an exaggeration from some of the things that we've seen. And so you might have a parent who is really upset just right out of the gate. And so, you want to, first of all, kind of get that parent to kind of calm down. And I'm a parent myself. And so I know that sometimes if my kid said, oh, this teacher was mean to me or something, right away, like mama bear comes out, I'm going to defend my kid. But then after a while, if I, calm down and think about it a little bit and hear both sides, then I might realize that, my kid maybe wasn't an angel or, something like that. But I think as a parental, first gut reaction is to defend your kid. And so when they write these emails, a lot of times I think that they're just, they're in that gut reaction phase. So our email response that we wrote below is kind of how we would respond to the parent that would have written this email. And so, right away, we would start with something that shows empathy and apologizes for their negative experience. So in that first paragraph, we're trying to say, yeah, we understand why, not every class works for every kid. Sometimes teachers teach differently than a kid likes to learn. And so, let them know that it's something that happens, and then, I'm sorry it went that way and didn't meet your expectations. From there, the second paragraph was kind of like talking about your approach and why the teacher taught that way and what they did to try to maybe make the class more engaging. And so, as Elizabeth said, you want to make sure the parent feels heard. So, address kind of specific concerns or problems that that those parents actually brought to you. And then in the end, give them some sort of solution. If you don't have a solution that they'll like, that is sometimes the way it goes. If you want to stick to your refund policy, we started this last paragraph with, I'd like to help you with a refund, but this is my policy. And if they don't like it, you can refer them to Outschool, or you can, maybe, like I said earlier, offer some different solutions to the problem that might help the teacher, or I'm sorry, help the parent, be okay and be right with the situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Laura. And I really like this response that you wrote up, because like the parent in their email, they're so riled up, they're upset, like you had said before. And I think that this email is a good example of like not getting dragged into that. And do you have any other advice about like, how to avoid responding in the wrong way when a parent is trying to kind of like pull you into an argument?
Well, I think that's similar to like what I said. Like the parent is probably writing their gut reaction. And when you read an email like this as a teacher, your gut reaction is like, how dare they? You know, it's very easy to be offended by what this person said. So I would say, first of all, walk away. You know, don't answer that right away. And what I tend to do is, even as an admin, when, you know, we're working in ops here, and you know, sometimes I'm like, wow, that was just mean. Rather than writing it right away, I'll walk away, I'll do some other stuff, I'll come back, I'll write it, I'll walk away again and come back. And sometimes I'll even say, hey, Elizabeth, am I like way out of line with this? Can you take a look? Because I want to make sure, you know, sometimes emotions are attached to this, and sometimes we're really vested. And so it's good to sometimes have that second look.
And along those lines, I think a good thing to keep in mind when you receive a message like this is that you don't want to match their tone. So they're coming to you all fired up and angry. You don't want to come back in the same way, because chances are that is not going to resolve anything. So if you write your first response and you read it through and you feel like, oh, this is kind of coming off the same way that I felt when they contacted me, then maybe start over.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I'll start writing and I'll be all mad and I want to prove my points, and I'm like, wow, that doesn't solve anything.
And it also gets back to what we mentioned in the beginning, where your parents and your learners are your enrollments, and you want to do everything you can to keep them as an enrollment and keep them as a customer on Outschool. So you want to make sure that you're approachable and willing to work through the issue, not just, you know, prove that they're wrong.
I just want to piggyback on that a little bit. You know, Elizabeth is saying do everything you can do. You know, that doesn't mean you totally bend over backwards. And, you know, if you have a parent who is just completely irrational, like you don't have to give in to those, but, you know, be willing to hear them and work with them, because it is, like she said, an enrollment, and they might have other kids, or the kid might want to take other classes with you. And so you want to really try to help them out without, you know, compromising your principles or, you know, your standards or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into, you know, when should a teacher turn to Outschool? So if you reach that point where you have tried to reason with the parent and you've offered multiple solutions that are not working, that is when you should reach out to Outschool, and our support team will then intervene and, you know, assess the situation and help the best that we can.
Great, and that relates to a question that came in the Q&A from Julie, who said, when a parent complains, are teachers required to contact someone from Outschool, or does the teacher just respond on their own? Do you guys want to speak a little bit more specifically to that?
Yeah, so the teachers are not required to contact Outschool. We ask that you first try to resolve the situation on your own. You know, it's your class. You know what you're teaching, why you're teaching it that way, and you're the expert in your class. So we want you to try to resolve the situation with the parent first. And then if that's not possible, that's when you contact us. Or, you know, sometimes we have teachers who are in the middle of trying to resolve a situation with the parent and they want to run an idea by us. You know, the parent reached out to me and is upset about X, Y, and Z. I think I want to respond in this way. I would like your input. And we're totally happy to answer those kinds of questions and give you our input. So you're definitely welcome to do that, but you're not required to let us know every single time somebody contacts you.
Yeah, unless it's something like really outrageous or something. And the same is true for parents. Like if parents come to us and say, oh, I hate this class, I want to get my kid out, we always direct them to the teacher first. And so there are a few exceptions, like if we can't get a hold of the teacher or something, but we do generally want any issues to to try to be worked out initially between the teacher and the family. And, you know, we can intervene when we need to, but it's not something that we need to get involved in. And a lot of times it's not necessarily a good thing for us to get involved, because then you have a middleman, you know, going through it rather than just the, you know, issue being addressed between the two parties. But if it ever gets to a point where you're like, I don't even know what to do with this parent anymore, or they're just completely, you know, off the deep end, yeah, absolutely, let us know.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen like some teachers, you know, come directly to support, or sometimes they'll also go to the Facebook group and ask other teachers for a little bit of help as well. And that can be another thing that helps you, you know, you walk away, you're waiting to get a little bit of input before you respond. If you ever need help with anything like that, our team or other teachers are always like have great advice for you. And
can I add to that? If you do go to the Facebook group, just be sure that you are maintaining confidentiality of your students and families. Even if you know, I've seen some on Facebook where they describe a family, but they don't name them or anything. And, you know, sometimes there's just enough information that you're like, oh, I know who that family is.
right.
We don't even want that much information, especially on social media. So be careful in how you do that.
That's really good advice, Laura. Yeah. And if there's something particularly sensitive, you know, not something that's outside of the realm of a normal complaint about just disliking the class for some reason, definitely come to us if it's something more serious, because we would love to know about that and be able to help you with those more intense situations as well. We had a couple of comments in the Q&A actually that I think a little bit of advice from Charles. Charles says that an approach he might use in conversation with a parent is to explain what has to be addressed and differentiate between intention and impact. So he says, regardless of the intention of the teacher, it's the impact on the parent that has to be addressed. That should put the parent in a more relaxed mood. Totally on point, Charles. I think that's really great advice. Yeah, and Pamela also pointed out, to Laura's point, sometimes parents are in the teacher Facebook group as well, so use caution, you know, because we do have a number of parents and teachers who overlap. So definitely maintain confidentiality, try to focus on the core problem and your wording a little bit to get the right advice to help you out. And Pamela also asked about the happiness guarantee when a family wants a refund. You guys want to speak to that a little bit as well?
That is something that we would take care of. So if a parent's you know, unhappy with the resolution, if you say, you know, I'd like to give you a refund, but this is my policy, and I need to be consistent with that, and you refer them to Outschool, then it's up to us whether or not this falls under the happiness guarantee. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on the situation. And so we again address each one of them and as a unique circumstance. And if we feel a happiness guarantee refund is I don't know, required, or if the situation falls within the happiness guarantee, then Outschool would issue the happiness guarantee.
Okay, very cool. We had, let's see, Tony was just asking about disruptive students. So I just want to take the opportunity to share our playlist with some of the past webinars that we've had, because we do have one that's specifically about managing your online classroom and keeping students engaged. So we definitely recommend you check that out. Thanks for asking, Tony. And
I'm going to piggyback on that one too. I'm sorry, I keep talking. You know, sometimes you get a dispute where one parent's mad because another parent was disruptive, and that creates kind of that issue in in dealing with parents. And so you're trying to resolve the issue with the parent that's upset and then deal with the kid who was the problem. In both of those, you know, we're happy to help too, but the best thing is to address the parent of the kid who's a problem, be specific about what you expected them the next time, and apologize to the upset parent. You know, and you could do a number of things in response to that. You could transfer them to another class or issue them a refund if it's, you know, a shorter class and it was just a bad experience, or try to do something to kind of make them feel, again, brought in and understood. There's quite a few teachers, again, who have handled this really well, this type of situation, that you could ask in the Facebook group as well.
Great. And then I think that we want to talk a little bit about the process from the Outschool side. So like what happens when, you know, you contact us or a parent contacts us and we have to help out with that situation.
Yeah, so we started to touch on this a little bit earlier. The first thing we need to do is get a good understanding of what's gone on. So in most cases, we do hear from the parent and the teacher, but when that's not the case, we will then reach out to the other party. So if we heard from the parent, then we're going to contact the teacher to find out, you know, make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page and to make sure we're not missing any piece of the story. We'll also look through conversations, look through class recordings if that's necessary. But that's our first step, is to get a good understanding of what's been happening.
Great. Cool. Well, I'm just going to answer a quick question from Pamela, which is really creative. Is there a webinar where kids can learn some online class manners? So I just want to answer this live because I'm having a little trouble typing it and thinking at the same time. But we have our animated video tips for your first Outschool class, which teaches some basic stuff. I know that there are some really bizarre things that kids do, and some of those things Sabrina and Jade had talked about in our first webinar about classroom management. And I do think there's some opportunity to have a little bit of education there. So we'll see what we can do. But right now we have, you know, that animated video and we have some community guidelines written down as well. Thanks, Pamela. So did you guys have any other important tips that you want to give, or like what's the most important thing that teachers can walk away with from this webinar?
To me, it would just be to, you know, stay calm, you know, take your time in writing a response. You don't have to respond immediately. And so take your time, think about what it is, and, you know, reread it, you know, think about how it might be perceived or even how it could be misinterpreted, because if a parent is mad, they may read it differently than even you intended. So take your time and really think about the email before you send it.
Yeah, and then I would say my takeaway would be just to remember how satisfying it can be to win over an upset parent. As Laura mentioned, we deal with that in customer support all the time. And I can tell you that it is very rewarding when you have a customer who comes to you very upset and then they end up on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So not only are they not upset anymore, not only are they just, you know, kind of neutral, they're overly enthusiastic about the measures and the effort that you took to help them reach a solution. And I would imagine parents feel the same way when a teacher is able to work out a messy situation with them.
I love that. Thanks, Laura and Elizabeth. I think those were really great pieces of advice. And I love that we have so many engaged teachers, so I wanted to share a couple of other comments by voice, so that way people who are watching the recording can hear them as well. Pamela said, happy and upbeat goes a long way. When someone is upset, I like to remember how I like to be treated when I feel slighted. I think that's really great, like being super empathetic, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And Julie mentioned via chat, I would say don't respond to something in email that you wouldn't respond to in the same way in person. So really great pieces of advice. You guys don't need to be in this webinar. You're already good at this. But I think that's it for now. Anything else you guys want to cover before we sign off?
I think I'm all set.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email us, support@outschool.com anytime. And we'll post this video to YouTube. We'll share it in the Facebook group. So if you want to keep the discussion going there, you definitely can. But for now, I just want to say thank you so much for coming, and thank you for your commitment to keeping parents happy. We really appreciate having you guys here. Bye, everyone.
Bye.